Good evening, everyone. Happy Friday and welcome to the latest instalment of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, hosted by myself, Craig Gray, and I'm joined by Brian Archer today to preview tomorrow's game against Hearts and look back at all the latest stuff that's happening Rangers-wise. Just to remember, guys, this is the Independent Rangers podcast, made for fans, by fans, and all content is free. Just before we start, would like to give a little message from one of our sponsors, and that is Forest Precision Engineering. They're a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company, and they've been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for many years, and we're absolutely delighted that they're backing our podcast. You can get them over at forestprecisioneng.com. And don't forget, you can also visit the Forest Precision Executive Lounge at Ibrox. It's a stunning new hospitality area within the main stand. And for more information on how to book this unique and intimate space, you can email the club via hospitality@rangers.co.uk. So, as we say, it's Friday. Always good to be here on a Friday. And it's a big day for Rangers tomorrow. Hearts at Tynecastle and a chance to go top of the league. As I said earlier, I'm joined tonight by Brian Archer. Brian, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing good, Craig. I'm delighted to have Rangers back tomorrow. I'm kind of one of these people that international football just doesn't really do it for me. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to watching Rangers.
Yep, same here. The international break was that great for me that during a really supposedly exciting game for Scotland midweek, I actually slept through it. But yeah, we move on to Rangers. But as we say, the international break is over. The Rangers are back, and we need to look at it, I think, tomorrow in a more positive way. And certainly, it's been the last wee while. Obviously, we're through that first block of games, through the first international break. Brian, I think for most people, I think it would be below average. Certainly, they would somewhat maybe the start of the season, but on the same token, I think if you said to be put at the start of the season, at this stage, would be in the Champions League, would be in the quarterfinals of the League Cup, and would be 2 points behind Celtic. I'm not saying people would have taken it, because you'll never take being behind Celtic, but I think the big sort of prize at the start of the season, the big objective was to qualify for the Champions League, and we did that. It's amazing how things can change, because a couple of weeks ago it's all doom and gloom. Dare I say it, for a lot of people it still is doom and gloom. It's always going to be doom and gloom for some people. But tomorrow we've got the chance to move to the top of the table, even if it is for a couple of hours, and it's a big opportunity, isn't it?
I think if you look at the season domestically in detail so far, there's certainly been negatives in there, but I think you just kind of need to treat this international break as a bit of a reset. We had a positive weekend just before it with our result, and then their result going our way. So hopefully Gio's had time on the training ground, a bit of a reset for some of the players that haven't been in great form. And as you say, we've got a chance to put a bit of pressure on. We play first, get the 3 points. That puts all the pressure on them. They've got a tricky game. I think they play Motherwell. So they've got a bit of a tricky game. It's not a gimme by any means. So this is a chance to really put a bit of pressure on. It's something we didn't really do a lot last season. Too many times last season, when we had the chance to put the pressure on, we let them off the hook. I go back to thinking the game we were 2-0 up against Motherwell and we drew 2 each. I think they drew with Hibs that same day, earlier in the day. And that was our chance to sort of jump all over that, and we let it slip. We can't afford to do that, because they're not going to drop that many points. I don't think they'll have that many days like they did against St Mirren. So we really need to, when we're playing first, we really need to try and put the pressure on, and hopefully we do that with a good performance and 3 points.
No, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned there, sort of touched on it, the chance to reset. I think it's a weird one, because I was thinking about this sort of throughout the last week or so, that Dundee United game. Obviously, we got the 3 points, which was the most important thing. The performance, again, wasn't great, and there was maybe a lot of negativity heading out the game that day. But at the same time, I was kind of looking at it going, well, it probably was best that we went into the international break winning the game, but maybe having a bad performance, because I think it might have actually, in a weird kind of way, if we went out there and smashed them 5-6-7-0, played brilliantly, the first thing that you want after that is to play right again. And then everyone breaking up for a couple of weeks, I think, might have disturbed that rhythm. So do you think that might be something that could have worked to an advantage?
I think so, yeah. I think, over the course of a season, you're never going to play brilliant every week. No team does. Even if you look at Rangers through the 90s when we were winning 9 in a row, we had these stuffy games where it was 2-1, it was 1-0. You're never going to play brilliant every week. So hopefully the kind of bounce we got the weekend before the international break, it kind of gives the players a bit of a kick in the backside. Some of them kind of need to take a bit of a look in the mirror and realise they've not hit the standards that they need to, and this is their opportunity now to really get to work during the break and put that right tomorrow. Hopefully, Gio's done the same, kind of look at things tactically. Hopefully he changes a few things, and I'm looking for him to let the players off the leash a bit, and hopefully he does that and we can get a positive performance and result.
Yeah, I think you're right there. In terms of letting players off the leash, it seems something that domestically we've not done a lot of. I've sort of said that a few times that Gio's biggest asset and biggest liability is his sort of analytical mind. I think that it's very good being analytical in Europe, but I think if you're doing it domestically, when you're in a position that Rangers are in, obviously you've got a lot of money compared to the other teams. You've got better players compared to pretty much every team in the country bar one. So, you shouldn't need to be overthinking it. And I think that, certainly last season, towards the end of last season, sort of a couple of games this season, he's maybe done that a few times. But as you say, this is definitely a chance to sort of reset. And, it's 2 points a gap. And as I say, we could be top by 2 o'clock tomorrow. In terms of the actual team tomorrow then, another selection headache for him, mostly with the bad news that Tom Lawrence earlier on we found out is going to be out today. We don't have an update on when he's going to be back, but I think tomorrow would have been a perfect game for him, to be honest, to play. He's the type of guy he can sort of cut open a defence out of nothing. I think he's a guy that's very, very quiet in game, but he pops up at the big moments. I think the Hibs game away pops up. I actually text my pal literally a minute before he scored that header and I said Lawrence has been absolutely terrible today, and then it's like a minute later he scored that great goal. I'm thinking of that. I'm thinking of the PSV game where he scores a free kick. So I think for a big game he would have been someone that would have been perfect. How big a miss do you think he's going to be tomorrow, and who do you think we should maybe play instead of him?
I think he will be a massive miss, and I think, to be honest, he has been a miss since he's been out. I think you've seen that. I'd probably describe him, I think we've used this same kind of way of describing Hadji as he's a moments player. He's not somebody that's going to be in the game for the whole 90 minutes, but he'll pop up with a key pass. He's, we've seen he's not afraid of taking a shot, something this Rangers team badly needs is players that are willing to shoot from outside the box. He's proven he's willing to do that, and he's pretty decent at it, to be fair. So I think we'll miss that kind of those moments from him, that intelligence that he's got. He seemed to be linking up quite well with Ryan Kent. I know Ryan Kent's been a bit off the boil recently, so I think if we can get Lawrence back as soon as possible, then I think you could see a bit of an upturn in our attacking play. In terms of who comes in for him, I want to see Tillman play through the middle. I think he is ideal position as number 10, playing off of either Morelos or Čolak, and then you're going to imagine he's going to play Kent in one of the wider roles, and then for me it'll be either between Matondo, Wright or Arfield for the other side. I think that's probably how we'll go. I don't see too many surprises in terms of the attacking areas of the team. Midfield he's got kind of more options in there, but I think that's probably how we would look to line up in terms of attacking. And it's just a question of whether he goes with Čolak or Morelos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that we will touch on in the next few moments. I mean, I think in terms of what you've said there, I think it will be Arfield that sort of plays in that sort of right forward role. I just think that's maybe with an eye to the game on Tuesday as well, because I think I've got a feeling that Scott Wright is going to start Anfield more so. I mean, not for his actual footballing ability, all due respect to the guy, but I think in terms of his pace and his work rate and his closing down, I do think Scott Wright does that well, and I think that he has shown in sort of games against big big European opposition. I'm thinking about the Leipzig game, Braga, etc. Even in the Europa League final, he wasn't great, but you still need energy like that to sort of keep you up the park. So I think he might be saved for that role for the Liverpool game. And obviously Arfield, he's actually done quite well this season, Arfield, I think. A lot of people were maybe unsure of him. He's got 4 goals, I think. So, he's an experienced player. He knows what it takes to sort of go to grounds like this and score goals and try and help Rangers get results. And that's certainly what we hope he can help do tomorrow. And obviously, you touched on it there. A big decision that the manager has to make. Is it Čolak? Is it Morelos up front? Morelos, it now does seem that he is up to speed. He's got to be surely now. I thought he done very, very well against Napoli. Obviously, Čolak's been banging the goals in. The manager was asked earlier today, have you made your mind up on who you're going to start up front tomorrow? And he just said yes, and that was it. So nobody knows what he's going to do, which is good. I like that from Gio. I like the sort of secretive nature sometimes of him not revealing his lineup, which I think he was possibly a bit guilty of last season, giving things away a wee bit too early. So I think that's something that he's learned. Me personally, I think he's going to go with Čolak. I probably would be inclined to go with Čolak just because of the form that he's been in, and the goals that he's been scoring. And it's a variety of goals he's been scoring as well. But I do also think that he's looking to Tuesday as well and thinking that Morelos is more suited to that sort of game at Anfield, being physical against the likes of, Van Dijk and what have you. Whereas I think if the ball falls to Čolak tomorrow, I think he'll put the ball in the back of the net. What's your thoughts on that sort of striking dilemma that he's got?
So similar to you, I think he'll probably go with Čolak. Personally, I would go with Morelos. I just think in this game, for me, this game, not to say it's the most important, but for me, this is the one we absolutely need to win to put that pressure on. If you were asking me, if we could only win one of the next 2, I'd bite your hand off for 3 points tomorrow, to be honest. And I think this game, for me, it needs more of a physical presence up front. Čolak's a big guy, but Morelos is capable of just putting himself about a bit more. He can occupy an entire back 4 on his own. He's got a bit more of a link-up play to him than Čolak. Čolak's a pure kind of penalty box finisher, which you need. And to be fair, he would also be a good option off the bench if we need a goal. But I think for starting it, I'd be inclined to go with Morelos just for that physical presence and his ability to bully defenders and occupy the entire back 4 and hopefully create space with guys like Tillman and Kent and Arfield on the right. For me, that's what I would be doing. I wouldn't mind actually seeing them both. I don't think this will ever happen under Gio, but I wouldn't actually mind seeing them both on the pitch at the same time. Just as an experiment. I'm not convinced Gio's inclined to play 2 strikers, but maybe it's worth an experiment, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think in terms of that, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I was at a press conference, I think it was after the Kilmarnock game, the 2-0 one, and he was asked, and it was basically, he looked shocked at the thought of playing 2 strikers up front, and he's just like, no, I'm not doing it. He did say that he may think about doing it if, we're desperate for a goal. But that is about as far as it goes. I think that he's obviously got his style of playing. He's, he wants to sort of stick to that one striker up front. But obviously as well with Lawrence being injured, we got another sort of injury update from the manager earlier, which wasn't a good one. John Souttar and Philip Hollander, it's confirmed that they're out until after the World Cup. For Souttar, it just seems like a repeat of his sort of, persistent issues that we've seen at Hearts. I feel really sorry for the guy, I'll admit. A lot of people are, sort of, hating on him and hating on Rangers, as if to say, why did we sign him on me? His injury concerns me. At the end of the day, for me, John Souttar was a risk-free signing in the sense that he was a free agent. His wages are going to be nothing compared to what the likes of Hollander's getting paid. And you know that if he does do well, it will pay off in the big time. If it doesn't pay off, which it hasn't so far, then you're not losing an awful lot. But you do really have to feel for the guy, don't you, Brian?
I think you do, yeah. I mean, I was reading the article in the Athletic today about David Temple as another player whose kind of career blighted by injury. And that was another story where you've kind of got to feel from, no footballer wants to be injured. John Souttar would much rather be out on the field tomorrow, playing for Rangers. It's not John Souttar's fault. It's not. I don't think there's any criticism to be levelled at him, and I think that's entirely wrong for MD that does that. It's not his fault that he's injured. It's just unfortunate players pick up injuries, and some players pick up more injuries than others. In terms of us signing him, I get the argument of, did we not look at his injury record, and it's fair to say that he'd been injury prone prior to signing for Rangers. But it's kind of like you say, it's a bit of a punt, a risk-free signing where free transfer, if he comes in and does well, then you can flip him potentially, or you get good service out of him. And I'd imagine our medical team have kind of backed themselves to get to the bottom of his injury problems and, get him fit and get him playing regularly. Hopefully that's still the case. I'm by no means writing him off. He's signed a long-term deal. He's here for a few years. Hopefully he gets over this injury and he can put a run of games together. And if that is the case, I do think he can be a success. I don't see any reason why, if he can get himself fit and clear of injuries, he couldn't, get a starting place in that team, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, especially with the sort of defensive issues that we've had this season. I mean, I think a lot of people would rather that maybe Souttar was in there instead of Sands. Although I personally think Sands has done okay, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there when you were talking about Rangers medical team, and you're saying that they'll obviously have a belief that they can get him back up to scratch. And something that I really picked up on what Gio said earlier was the fact that he said that this was the first time in months that he's not in pain. And to me, that's not a surprise that as soon as he's came to Rangers, where you're going to get properly treated and properly looked after. I know, Hearts at the end of the day are a very professional club, but the level at Rangers compared to Hearts is night and day. So, clearly, the guys at Rangers knew what they were doing. I have seen a lot of criticism actually of the sort of Rangers medical team and the the scouting departments in terms of the amount of players that we've had injured, and people maybe saying why are we signing players that are always injured? Well, the sort of rebuttal I would have to that is that apart from Souttar and Roof, none of the players that are injured now, your Hadji, Morelos obviously had his spell in the sidelines, Hollander, even off the ball with his heart condition. These weren't things that were pertinent in the players' careers before they came to Rangers. It's only been unluckily happening since they've came to Rangers now. Hollander's maybe more of a sort of long-term issue. We'll touch on him in a wee minute in terms of his future, because last season he was out injured and then he came back, and then he was out injured, then he came back again, and then he was out again. But the Morelos one was just one injury that was very long-term. And the Hadji one's one injury that's very long term. I mean, that's really, really unlucky. And I think a lot of people do maybe underestimate the amount of injuries that we've got, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously frustrating for fans, and we tend to kind of look into it in a bit too much detail because nobody wants to be missing players, especially players of the quality of Hadji and Roof, real game-changing players. And it can kind of look, the injury situation can look worse than it is when you've got, these key players out injured, but like you say, the Morelos one was just that. I think that's probably his first long-term injury since he's been here. Other than that, he's been pretty solid for us, and he's been always available when he comes back from international duty in time. But I think it can be really easy because it is so frustrating when you've got kind of players that are seen as key players out injured. Everybody's said when Highlander's fit, he's potentially one of the best defenders at the club. So he's another one that, we always remember how good he is when he's fit, and then when he gets injured, it's frustrating. But, I mean, every club's got injuries. There's not, football's a kind of high-impact, high-intensity sport. Nobody's going to be injury-free. It's just unfortunate some players, bodies don't handle it as well as others, and some pick up injuries more than others. There's players that clubs have signed that never had injuries before they signed them, and then when they arrive, they pick up, more frequent injuries. It's just one of those things. We just kind of need to deal with it, and have a bit of faith in the medical department that they kind of know what they're doing. I'm sure they've seen all this before. This won't be anything new to them, and they'll know how to get the players through it and kind of get them the right support and get them on the road to recovery.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, the people slagging the medical team, up until the summer anyway, I know we had Mark Waller in, who was like Liverpool's sort of basically head doctor for years and years through, the likes of Rafa Benitez and whatnot. So, I think guys like that know what they're doing and know what they're talking about. You don't get employed by clubs like that if you're doing a bad job.
Guys like that have forgot more about sports medicine than I'll ever know. So it's not I'm not going to sit here and criticise them. It's definitely not. I'm not in a position to criticise them, or can I have an opinion on how they're doing their job. They know more about this than I'll ever know. So I trust that we've got the right people in the right positions, and we've been unlucky with some of these injuries. Hadji's one was an unlucky one. At the time, it didn't look as bad as it's turned out to be, but it has turned out to be quite a serious one. But again, I've got confidence in the medical team that they've seen all this before and they know how to get the players through it and get them back to fitness.
No, absolutely. One of the big ones there is obviously Hollander, and you mentioned there, I'm actually one of those people that think that he is the best defender at the club when he's fit. I just think that, it's kind of like a perfect storm for him at the moment. I think that in general, even if he was fit, I don't really think he suits Gio's sort of style of play in terms of coming out from the back. I think he is obviously a slow player, but his recoveries are excellent. That was kind of one of the first things that sort of got me about him. It's like, if the guy did make a mistake, he would always recover very, very quickly, or maybe not a mistake as such, but for every sort of yard or 2 yards extra pace that an attacker had, he would make up for it in terms of his strength, which was not 1 or 2 times better than the attacker, it was 5 or 6 times better. So he's winning sort of 9 times out of 10 a challenge. I just think, unfortunately for him, he's coming to the end of his contract this year. He's obviously on big money. He came in for a pretty sizable fee. I think it was about £3 million or something like that in 2019. And it doesn't look like he fits into the manager's style of play. I think it might be the last that we've seen with Hollander, unfortunately. Are you kind of inclined to think that way as well, or can you see something for him?
I think so, unfortunately, and it's a shame because I think when he's fit, I'm not sure. I think Gio would certainly give him a chance. I'm not sure he would just dismiss him. If you look at Katic, we kind of knew from the off Gio didn't fancy Katic. He doesn't play the way Gio wants to play. He's not kind of as good on the ball as what Gio wants his defenders to be. But I think Hollander's a bit different. I think he's not the worst on the ball. He's not. He's decent. And I think the thing that's always impressed me about Hollander is his reading of the game. So he doesn't need that blistering pace because his reading of the game is so good that that'll get him out of any trouble. So that was always, and he's a big guy, he's tall, he's physical, which you need in this league. So he's got all the attributes. I think the reason why I don't think that we're in a position to be able to offer him a new contract is that injury record. I don't think, we don't know when he's going to be back. And then when he does come back, we don't know how long he's going to take to get full match sharpness. And then if he'll even come back the same player he was, because he's been out for so long, I don't think we'll be in a position to kind of offer him a new contract on the hope that he gets back to the level he was at. I think it is going to be unfortunate that he'll leave on a free in the summer, which is a shame because I think that 55 season he proved that when fit, he's one of the best defenders in the league, because I think he was fit for the 55 season for the majority of it, and the partnership that him and Goldson had was basically the bedrock of that season and that record that we had for the least amount of goals conceded.
Yeah, you're right. I think as well that obviously under Gerrard, when he first came in, it was kind of Goldson and someone. It was Goldson and Katic. It was Goldson and Worrell. And it was kind of chopping and changing. It wasn't until Hollander came in where that was Goldson's sort of first proper, long-term partner, if that kind of makes sense, where you just knew that it was going to be Goldson and Hollander. And, for that, even when Hollander first came in the 1920 season, I thought the first half of that season, they were excellent, which obviously culminated in us, getting through to the next round of the Europa League, beating Celtic at Celtic Park, and then obviously the inevitable annual Rangers winter break calamity kicked into gear after that. But he was sort of the first long-term partner for Connor Goldson. Obviously that continued into the 55 season, and I mean, people are moaning about obviously the money or lack of money that we're spending, which we will sort of touch on a wee bit later. But I mean, I was looking at it the other day, and it's like Hollander, Hadji, Roof, 3 guys straight away. That's 60 grand minimum a week worth of talent that we've got injured and not playing a part in the squad. So I mean, when you've got guys like that earning big money that aren't playing, it's not really just a case of, we're going to go out and sign a guy at 5, 6, 7, 8 million quid, and we're also going to pay him 20 grand a week. I mean, the reality is, if they 3 guys were sold, you've freed up 60 grand a week minimum worth of wages, which could have went to a new signing.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, everybody says, just go and buy a player for 5 million, but, that's all right saying that, but you then need to pay them what a £5 million player's worth, which then adds extra onto the wage bill when you've already got, as you said, potentially upwards of 60 grand a week sitting on the treatment table. So it's all those kind of things that probably as fans we don't think about. We just want to see new signings. We just want to see them spend money on transfers. But then you don't realise, right, if you're buying a player for 5 million, you then need to pay them what a £5 million player's worth. No agent's going to let their client move for £5 million but get paid a pittance. They want what the market value is for that transfer fee. So it's kind of all very well us sitting here and saying, just sign players, but I think there's kind of more nuance to it than that, and probably more nuance than certainly what I kind of let myself think about most times. I just want to see, shiny new players holding the scarf above their head at Ibrox. But as you say, we've got a good bit of talent, on the treatment table, hopefully. Certainly in Roof's case, not too far away from making a return.
No, we certainly hope that. And just before we move on to our next topic, just want to give another message from one of our sponsors, Zenith Coins, and you can get your official Rangers Club coin copy over at their website. And each gold-plated coin has a unique serial number engraved on the outer rim, and it comes complete with a Rangers presentation box and certificate of authenticity. And you can join Rangers legends and famous Rangers fans like Ali McCoist, Derek Johnson, Malvin Andrews, Tom Stoltman, Gordon Ramsay, just to name a few, and own your official Rangers Club coin. And the best part about this is you can save a wee bit of money on it as well. You can get 10% off your purchase by using the code GN10. That's GN10 to get 10% off your purchase and get your Rangers coin a little bit cheaper. But yeah, moving on. Today, guys, I don't know if you realise, but Rangers released their 40th kit in the last 4 months with a new 4th kit that was released today. I mean, it's it's another one, and the last few weeks we've talked about the club kind of reading the room when it comes to communication with fans on certain issues. I mean, look, I think I'm led to believe that this kit's been released because it's part of the Castore contract that apparently we need to release 4 kits a season. If that's the case, fair enough. But, it's like, are we really going to be sort of indebted to Castore forever, if that kind of makes sense? I mean, I think it was also be in the Castore contract that they provide the best customer service and they provide premium products for fans, which clearly for a lot of people doesn't seem to be the case sometimes as well. So I don't really know how you can have it both ways, but I actually think the kit looks all right, to be honest. But it's like, after everything that's been going on recently in terms of the amount of money that the club seem to be asking the fans to stump up, they're now basically asking for an extra, I think, 65 quid. I mean, all I'm saying is I'm really grateful that I don't have any kids, because I could not handle them sitting moaning at me, demanding that I get them the new strip, Brian, honest to God. What's kind of your take on that one?
So firstly, I'd say I like the new kit. I really like it. I think it looks quite nice.
It does look nice.
but I'm not going to buy it. Personally, I think 4 kits by September is just a bit too much. I'll be honest, I've not bought any merchandise this season. I think football in general, a new kit every season, I think it's a bit too much. And it wasn't that long ago when, teams would keep their kit for a couple of seasons. I spent a fair bit last season on merchandise, on, the anniversary top, the home top, the training gear, the jacket. I bought all that stuff last season. It was all in pretty good condition. I don't necessarily feel the need to have the new kit every season. So I took the decision I wasn't going to buy anything this season, which is fair enough. The thing that also kind of irked me was that when I bought the top last season, they did that thing where you can't get it printed online. You need to go into the store, because obviously they know that if you go into the store to get it printed, you'll spend extra on the training range, on the everything else, which I did, of course. Yeah. But then when I bought another top later in the season, I was able to get it printed online, so they know that for that kind of launch period, if they hold back the prints for in-store, people will go in-store and then they'll buy, they'll spend extra, which is common sense, and, I totally fell for it, but it was just one of those things I was like, all right, okay. But, I like I say, I like the kit, but, 4 kits by September, is it really necessary? I don't think so. I feel sorry for the parents that's got 3 kids that, they want all the kits, and it's not just the top they want, it's the full kit. Which is, I don't even want to think about how much that costs. The top's about 65 quid. I don't know how much the full kit is. And then if they want it printed with a name and number and all the badges on it, that all adds up. Is it in this, kind of cost of living crisis, is, asking fans to fork out for another kit really a sensible thing? I appreciate that it's probably in the contract, so we've not got any wiggle room. But you're kind of wanting them just to read the room a bit better and, judge the mood of the fans and realise, right, now is probably not the best time to hit go on this. Maybe we'll hold off for an extra month. But, it's released, I like it, but I'm not going to buy it. And, I think it's just a bit too much.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. The thing that I don't understand is, like, why, if there is another kit to be released after you've released your 3, why not release it around maybe Christmas time? Because, people seem to be a wee bit happier around Christmas time for whatever reason. And also as well, you can use it as an excuse to buy it as a Christmas present. But,
I think I was wondering is this the last kit this season? Because I think last season we had 5, because we had the anniversary kit. We had the 150th anniversary kit. Then we had the kit for the Legends game as well. That was released. Yeah. So I think we actually had 5 kits last season. You just don't know, is this the last kit, or are they going to do another one just before Christmas to try and get, as you say, the kind of Christmas shoppers?
Well, you never know. I mean, Edmondson House is supposed to be opening up soon, so they might have like an Edmondson House, like retro kit or something like that. But then again, sorry, please, if anyone from your store's listening, do not do that. Do not take marketing advice off me. But yeah, it does seem a wee bit much. But again, it's just something that's happened, and you've got to kind of get on with it. I mean, it does sort of fit in though to the sort of bigger issues at the club in terms of the communications with the fans. And I just wanted to speak about the John Bennett and Stuart Robertson interviews that were conducted recently. James Bisgrove actually as well, he done one with Heart and Hand, so we can kind of touch on that a wee bit as well. I mean, I thought it was good that we've at least got people speaking. I think in terms of John Bennett though, whilst I like the guy, I think he's I don't think he's dishonest or anything that he says. I think he comes across really well. But the issue for me with that is, first of all, the fact that it's all in-house, which means that, you're not going to be asked really difficult questions, unfortunately. And also as well, the sort of, just some of the stuff that was being said in terms of it being put behind a paywall initially. Now, I know Rangers did rectify it after like a couple of hours and put it on YouTube. So, fair enough. I don't want to criticise the club too much for that, because I think, at the end of the day, you can't criticise the club for they're not doing this, they're not doing that, and then when they rectify it, then moan that they did it in the first place. It's like, you need to give the club credit for actually rectifying it in the first place. But I think the one sort of takeaway that I got from John Bennett's interview was a lot of the buzzwords, and the favourite one that he liked to use was sort of best in class, in terms of a lot of things happening in the club. But the problem is, it doesn't seem for a lot of things that the fans are getting best in class. As we say, with the sort of customer service side of things, it's not great. Ticketing's not great. My Gers isn't great. And I don't want to try and come across as one of these guys that moans all the time or anything like that. But you can't say best in class. You can't charge best in class, but then not give best of class.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to the kind of initial release of the interviews, it feels like Rangers are scoring a lot of own goals just now off the park in terms of their communication. Yeah. It feels like it's not a massively difficult thing to solve in terms of the communication piece. It feels like it just needs people to think more about the optics of things and read the room a bit better, as we've said. The thing about it being behind a paywall, if you're trying to put a communication message out there to and you want it to reach your entire fan base, then the logic tells you, put it out free of charge on the YouTube channel. I know they rectified that, and credit to them for that, but I did see a few criticism of that when it initially went up. And as you say, in terms of the content of the interviews, you're saying a lot of it's kind of in-house. One of the things we probably need to accept is we're probably never going to get the answers or get to ask the questions of these people that we want to ask, because I'm guessing that's just not how media works these days.
Yeah.
You don't just, even when I'm guessing even when you go to Gio's press conferences, people don't just get to ask anything they want to ask. If you're there as fan media, I'm guessing even if you're like totally raging after the game, you can't just let that come out, because you'll just you won't get anywhere with it. I think the thing that kind of piqued my interest in terms of what John Bennett said was about the communication, is he kind of owned that and kind of fronted up to it and said that's not just on the comms department, that's that has to be owned by the entire board, and they have to kind of take that on and really kind of improve on it. So that's the one thing I want to see improved in the next months. And that's the kind of one area where if he wants to aim for best in class, then I think that's probably the first area that they should be aiming for in terms of the off the field stuff. And then there's the other issues around, I think John Bennett said they were looking at a new ticketing provider in terms of for the online tickets for the Edmondson House and for the match tickets. So hopefully that improves things for people. My Gers is a kind of continuous thing that I'm guessing they're continuously looking at and trying to improve based on feedback. So hopefully they listen to some of the feedback on that and make improvements. The positive thing is they seem to be listening, and they're coming out and saying that they're hearing this. So I think now all we need to see now is a bit of action behind that, and that's obviously not going to come tomorrow or the next day. It's a kind of long-term thing, but if we can look back in 6 months, regardless of what's happening on the pitch, and say, right, this is the communication's much better, they've taken on board this has improved, even if they're just doing these regular updates and letting us know what's happening with projects like Edmondson House, like the new ticketing system, even that would be an improvement, just so that fans are kept aware of what's happening in the background with projects like that. I think that would be a big step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of the communications, I mean, a lot of people are quick to sort of judge, it's the communications team fault that the communication's bad. But I mean, as someone that works in comms myself, I know that for a lot of the time that isn't the case, because when you work in comms, you can, whilst you are the communications team or the communications department, you can only say so much at the same time, because they won't be privy to, some of the big decisions that take place in the club. So, they'll get told basically what to say by the executives at the club, and then it's up to them in terms of how they frame that message and how they put that across. So, it is, it's in terms of all departments working together and stuff like that, to obviously come up with the best messaging. But I wouldn't say it's just solely the fault of the communications team. I think, as I say, someone that works in comms myself, it's like, well, they'll be getting told basically the big news of the day or whatever it is, and then it's up to them in terms of how they communicate it. But another thing in terms of that, the Stuart Robertson interview that he done, I believe it was with the Rangers Review. I've got to admit, I was quite concerned by that in terms of the Champions League money that really seemed to come out of nowhere in terms of how little really we were actually getting from it. I think instead of the sort of 40 million that most people were expecting, it's around half that, if I'm led to believe, because of this 10-year sort of UEFA club coefficient. And I don't quite understand how that has only just came out just now, because all that information would have been in the public domain, in terms of the way that UEFA work their finances. This has been going on for a few years now. It's not just came out of nowhere. UEFA haven't just went, "Oh, Rangers are now in the Champions League, we're going to give them half of what they would normally be due." So that was a big communication concern for me, not just from the club, but I think in terms of sort of the media as a whole. Because if you look at all the newspapers and certainly the mainstream media anyway, it was all Rangers secure £40 million jackpot. It's a £40 million game. And, it seemed that no one from the mainstream media, whose job it should be to do it anyway, to ask those questions either of the club. And that just seemed really, really weird. And now it's like, as soon as, the transfer window's shut and we've not brought in anyone new, it's all of a sudden we find out that the Champions League money's half of what we thought it would be. What was your thoughts on that?
The thing that kind of irked me about that is that when we qualified, after we beat PSG and we qualified, that would have been the point to come out and try and do a bit of expectation setting from the club. Now, I'm not saying they come out and say, "Oh, we're not getting any money for this," or, they totally pour cold water on it. But, they were kind of quite happy to let fans believe the 40 million, and we were all talking about who we're signing and what business we're doing. That would have probably been the point to come out and try and do a bit of expectation setting. The fact that it's waited until there's a bit of discontent among the support because we've not signed anyone off the back of it, and then they've had to come out on the back foot and explain that's what kind of bothered me. And it's kind of the thing that bothered me around the whole, all the kind of interviews I've seen from the executives is they're sort of coming out from a position of being on the back foot. Now, fair play to them for actually doing it, for recognising there's a need to do it and doing it. But the one thing I would say is they've left it to the point where they're doing it from the back foot rather than coming out early, and doing some media rounds when we qualified and doing a bit of expectation setting, which would have probably been with hindsight, that would have been the thing to do. They're kind of coming at it from the back foot. So hopefully they've kind of learned a lesson from that, and we want to hear from them just as much as when things are going well and we're doing well. We want to hear from them and hear what their plans are, just as much as when things aren't going so well and we need answers. So I think they kind of need to get that balance a bit right, to be honest.
No, I think you're right. And, I was just touching on it from the sort of the media side as well, just from working on it. It just seemed very strange that pretty much every media outlet, whether that's a TV station, a radio station, a newspaper, or, an online paper or whatever, we're all going with this same sort of 40 million jackpot line. And it just clearly wasn't the case. And literally all it took was, 5 minutes worth of research or simply asking the club, how much would Rangers get if you qualify? Now, that's the thing. Did they do that? Maybe they did do that, and you don't know what the Rangers board or whoever said to them. But we just don't know. It kind of just seems like a real breakdown in communication, because that is the reason that the fans think that this was the case, because that's what you see in the papers, that's what you see on Twitter. It's 40 million.
£40 million jackpot looks a brilliant headline in a newspaper or in a tweet. That's what we've seen, and that makes for a brilliant headline, but it looks like the people in the background maybe haven't done the research or haven't spoken to the club, or there's been a bit of a breakdown in communication there in terms of what people are expecting or getting versus what we're actually getting for this. So I guess that's something for fans to bear in mind in future when we qualify the figures that we see, and I include myself in this because I was as guilty as anybody for thinking, £40 million jackpot, brilliant, who we signing? But I guess, in future, it's something to kind of bear in mind is, the figures that we see in the newspaper or read on Twitter might not be entirely accurate.
Yeah, well, it's like your old granny used to say, isn't it? Don't believe everything you read in the papers. And I suppose those lessons for the 1940s could still be learned nowadays, but instead I don't believe what you see in the papers, it's don't believe what you read on Twitter. But yeah, just before we wrap up, guys, because obviously we know it's Friday and we're taking up a lot of your time here, we just wanted to mention one of our last sponsors, and that's Football Prizes, and their weekly competition this week. I've got to admit, it's an absolute cracker. It's a Brian Laudrup signed Rangers shirt. So you can head over to their website at footballprizes.co.uk to see that. You can also head over to the Gersnet online Twitter page to see that as well, and the link will be up there as well. Just before we go as well, over at gersnet.co.uk, I've got to say as well, we've got a brand new website. And it's looking really, really good. Obviously, you can go there with your forum and you can sort of see articles and whatnot written by some of our contributors, and there's a wee sort of introduction to us as a podcast team as well, which I'm sure you'll all be delighted to see. But yeah, just got to say before we leave, thanks very much, Brian, for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we'll be back in the next coming days, and it'll be Colin hosting with Alec and Gary to preview that trip to Anfield on Tuesday, which is going to be a cracker. But we've got big fish to deal with tomorrow in terms of Hearts, and hopefully we can get over the line before that game on Tuesday. So again, thanks to you guys at home for listening. Thanks, Brian, for joining me. I've been Craig Gray, and thank you for listening to the Gersnet Podcast.